Pirelli's Formula One tyres were once again a hot topic of discussion during the Qatar Grand Prix weekend. It appears that F1's only tyre supplier can never receive any good press, since everything it does is never good enough. Is this, however, justified? What could be the solution for Pirelli? And will the FIA step in and demand changes after threatening certain tracks and Pirelli? The usual objection is that the tyres don't allow the drivers to push for more than a handful of laps. If the drivers do, the tyres overheat and the grip level drops, resulting in more sliding and hence overheating. It's a never-ending cycle. The way you could see this issue is that everything has a limit. It is the drivers, and to a lesser extent the team's obligation to identify and maintain that limit. One example is the maximum fuel flow that they all must maintain. The maximum racing fuel limit is the same, they must all stay under it. They must also optimize battery utilization and recharging. To get the best overall performance, everything on these cars, including the tyres, must be utilized to their full potential, while remaining within the restrictions. And although some teams and drivers accomplish this successfully, others do not. The tyre issue in Qatar was the same. It should have been left up to the teams to control the situation by staying off the curbs. We frequently heard the crew instruct a driver to avoid a curb because it was affecting something on the car, and this is no exception. It all comes down to discipline. So why all of a sudden start to interfere with the race? This should also apply to how the tyres are used in terms of pressures, camber and so on. This would also make the on-track action more intriguing because the tyres would be subject to additional factors, leaving more room for the teams to try and perfect the setup, instead of Pirelli choosing the tyre strategy for the teams. Pirelli is unfortunate enough to be a neutral, or should that be neutral target in this circumstance? Because the teams are unable to develop the tyres, any limits can be placed on the supplier, making it very easy to point the finger. While Pirelli is going to be around for a few years yet, F1 needs to look after its tyre supplier because the cars won't get very far without those 4 trunks of rubber. The frequency, amplitude and duration of any input will have an effect on the tyre structure. The frequency is given by the car's speed in an area of the track, and the amplitude is given by differential height between the bottom and top section of the curb. Simply explained, this determines how large of a hammer you use and how many times per second you pound it. Everything has a breaking point, and the Pirelli tyres are supporting a car weighing a minimum of 798 kilograms, carrying significant downforce, and so corner speeds, and being constantly battered into curbs. These are harsh circumstances, and failures will occur, if not to the tyres then to the car's suspension components. Pirelli found a fault on the tyres that had never been seen before, and it deserves credit for detecting the early indicators of failure before it occurred. Pirelli informed the FIA that it devised several remedies, including reducing the track boundaries 80 centimeters closer in at turns 12 and 13, and the race proceeded without incident. Yes, the circumstances should not have occurred, but once it has, you can only react to it and create change. Having said that, cars play a significant role. There is a lot going on with the dampening setup to decrease the car's movement. When the car is driving over a rough surface, such as a curb, the tyre needs to accept more of that input since it is fighting the curb inputs. Nobody loves to see tyre failures, and no one likes to have lap times reduced for track width breaches, especially after the fact. So maybe it's time to actually invest in a technology that can predict when a car will go off the circuit. It then informs the driver, allowing them to promptly slow down and avoid a false lap time that disappears later. If the car's detecting system detects a line in or on the track, it might be put far enough away from any curb to avoid any tyre or car damage. It might also be utilized in all sessions for all laps to familiarize drivers with the true circuit boundaries. When the obstacles or walls are erected on the track's edge, the drivers manage to avoid them. Of course, seeing a barrier is very different from seeing a white line drawn on the track, but if a viable system was put in place, I'm sure they'd grow used to it rather fast. In qualifying, drivers seldom encountered track limit issues due to another car being in the way. Therefore, there's no need to argue over who is at fault for an infraction. Set off the sensor and you instantly lose the lap time. If it's at the last turn, you lose the following lap time. At the very least, the driver will be aware and will be able to back off and save the tyres. In the race, you could have a review process if someone pushed you off the track, and you can also use this system to detect if someone gained a position while off the track. These issues are linked because the severe 50mm dips of the Qatari pyramid curbs were ultimately causing tyre degradation. A more robust automated track limits monitoring system should allow for the installation of less harsh curbs. There is an opportunity here to tackle 2 problems at the same time. And if not, we'll probably see less of these tracks in the upcoming years. As according to FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem, venues like As Lusail and the Red Bull Ring must fix track restrictions issues or risk losing Formula One places. Ben Sulayem has stated that such scenarios are unacceptable during the Qatar Grand Prix weekend, which saw grid places altered and a slew of in-race penalties given out to shift the order. He believes that the focus for change is not on the FIA policing things more effectively to stamp out any offenders. Instead, he believes that tracks with a demonstrable problem with track limitations, like as Qatar and Austria, must adopt circuit alterations to discourage drivers from running wide. When asked what he planned to do about the track limitations issue following the sometimes absurd situations in Qatar, Ben Sulayem responded, "You're absolutely right about it. We had the same issue in Austria. It was 1,200 offences there. And I have to say, congratulations to the stewards because they spotted it. But is that the solution? No. The solution is to improve the track itself. I know some are resistant to it, but to tell you the truth, if they don't, there is no race. It's as simple as that. We can't afford this." Ben Sulayem stated that venues with track constraints must create better curb designs. "We have to work on a solution," explained Ben Sulayem. "One of the solutions is to make it slippery when they go off. Nobody can stop the drivers except the drivers themselves. We can think of the height of the curbs. Does it damage the cars? Or maybe there is a possibility of putting some gravel, but with gravel we have to be very careful. How deep is the gravel? Because you don't want anyone to get stuck. And how big is the gravel? Because you don't want the car to be damaged. It is a balance. But I believe now it's not a matter of, oh, do we do it? We have to do it. And we have to listen to the drivers mainly, to the feedback from them. I will have to make it urgently because it has to be implemented for next year. We cannot afford for it to continue, especially where we see it all the time." F1 averted a recurrence of the late-night post-track limitation shenanigans from the Austrian GP, where stewards had to comb through suspected violations for many hours. This was accomplished by the FIA increasing its stewardship and implementing stronger protocols at its remote operations center to guarantee it was more on top of things. Ben Sulayem believes that more advances to better regulate track limit violations are conceivable, particularly with new technology, but that the FIA need more resources to unleash it. The use of technology should be there, he stated. It is being used in a lot of areas, but the FIA needs more resources to invest back into the sport. I'm not hiding here. We need more resources. I mean, it's a $20 billion operation here, and we cannot run it on a shoestring. Ben Sulayem believes that a better agreement with F1 is required to appropriately support the amount of expenditure required by the FIA to accomplish its job more successfully. "Our agreement has to be better," he explained. "You have to remember one thing. We own the championship. I represent the landlord and we lease it. Our mission is different to Liberty, but we are in the same boat." He added, "You should not be running this big responsibility with a shoestring. We are transparent. We tell people this is what it costs. People are bragging about how much each F1 team is worth, but the FIA should be free and have the resources to run it in the best way. Every time we are better, we make the teams better and we make the sport better." So what are your thoughts? Do they need to make changes to the tracks? Or should there be a better track limit system implemented? Or perhaps you'd like to see Pirelli produce better tyres so that the drivers can stay racing? Let us know in the comments down below.